I'm Scott Harris, Executive Director of Museums at the University of Mary Washington, and welcome to another Monroe Minute. Before he was elected the 5th President of the United States in 1816, James Monroe held more public service jobs than anyone ever elected to our nation's highest office. He was a Revolutionary War soldier, a local, state, and federal legislator, a diplomat, a cabinet secretary, and governor of Virginia. And that's the job we'll talk about today. Virginia's first constitution, adopted in 1776, created the office of governor. The General Assembly, as our state legislature is known, elected the governor annually, and the person holding office could serve up to 2 additional terms. Former governors could be elected again after an interval of 4 years from their last term. Now, this system was used until 1830, when Virginia adopted a different constitution, and it's changed a few times since then over the years. Today, citizens registered to vote in the Commonwealth of Virginia elect governors for a 4-year term. A governor cannot be immediately re-elected, but can run again after a 4-year interval, and we've had at least one who has done that. James Monroe was elected to his first 1-year term as governor in December 1799. The office to which he was elected was described by one historian as having, quote, great honor but little power. The framers of the 1776 Constitution, who were, if you recall, engaged in a revolution against executive tyranny, the tyranny of a king, so feared abuse of power by an executive that they gave the governor very little real authority. He could not veto legislation. He could not make significant appointments to public office. In fact, the governor really had only 2 main duties under the 1776 Constitution, 2 effective powers. First, he could summon the Council of State, which was a group of 12 men, and yes, they were men. Everybody in office was a man at that time. These 12 men were chosen by the General Assembly, not by the governor, to be advisors to the governor. The council was considered the upper house of the state legislature, and it did eventually evolve into what is now the state Senate of Virginia. Although they were ostensibly supposed to aid the governor, members of the council often ended up being his critics more than his advisors. It was not until much later that Virginia governors could select department heads that constituted what we would today call a cabinet. The other gubernatorial power was acting as commander-in-chief of the state militia. The militia was a military force that dated from colonial times, composed of all able-bodied free white men, who could be called into service by the governor to defend the Commonwealth against invasion, to wage war against Native Americans, or to suppress revolts of enslaved African Americans. And it was this last function that figured prominently in James Monroe's first term as governor. On August 30th, 1800, Monroe was informed by a white slave owner that an uprising of enslaved persons in Henrico County was scheduled to begin that very night. While the state constitution empowered the governor to call out the militia after a revolt had begun, Monroe decided to preemptively issue the call rather than wait for trouble to begin. His action was later endorsed by the General Assembly. The uprising had been planned by a charismatic man named Gabriel, who was held in bondage as a skilled blacksmith by a white plantation owner named Thomas Prosser. Gabriel's plan, coordinated with several free and enslaved African Americans and possibly 2 white men, was to stage simultaneous uprisings in several counties around the state capital of Richmond and within the city itself. They also were going to start fires and attempt to seize arms in the state arsenal. A sudden torrential thunderstorm disrupted the plans, and Gabriel and several of his compatriots dispersed into the countryside. Over the next few weeks, dozens of African Americans, including Gabriel, were apprehended by the militia. Interrogations revealed these plans for the setting of fires, for going to the arsenal. They also revealed something else. Part of the plan was to kidnap Governor Monroe and to hold him ransom in exchange for emancipating the enslaved. White Virginians' fears of what might have been, and of further revolts, led to calls for harsh punishment for Gabriel and his followers. Gabriel and several others were quickly tried and executed. But when no further uprisings occurred, Governor Monroe sought to pardon a large number of enslaved persons who were more followers than leaders. 6 were pardoned, but the Council of State was divided over the others, and they thwarted Monroe's efforts to try and pardon more. In all, 35 African Americans were put to death, and others received lesser punishments. During this time, Monroe and his wife Elizabeth suffered a personal tragedy as well, when their 18-month-old son, James Spence Monroe, died on September 18, 1800. While Gabriel's uprising and its aftermath embodied the most dramatic period of James Monroe's governorship, there were other events of major importance that occurred. In 1800, he oversaw the opening of Virginia's first penitentiary, designed by the renowned architect Benjamin Henry Latrobe. Considered an innovative correctional facility for its time, the penitentiary was used until its demolition in 1928. In 1801, Monroe also oversaw completion of the Virginia Manufactory of Arms, a state-owned arsenal. Monroe's third term as governor ended in December 1802. Over the next 9 years, he was busy. He helped negotiate the Louisiana Purchase Treaty with France in 1803 and went on other diplomatic missions to Great Britain and Spain. He contended for his party's presidential nomination in 1808, losing to James Madison, and was elected a member of the Virginia House of Delegates from Albemarle County in 1810. In January 1811, Monroe was elected to his fourth term as governor, but this time would serve only 3 months before accepting the role of Secretary of State in James Madison's administration. The one notable achievement of Monroe's fourth gubernatorial term occurred on February 13, 1811, when he signed the bill that authorized construction of a new executive mansion to serve as an office for the Commonwealth's governors and a home for their families. The elegant federal-style building that was completed in 1813 is the oldest governor's residence still in use in the United States. While Monroe never lived there, the James Monroe Museum loaned a portrait of him from its collection, this portrait, in 2013 for the mansion's bicentennial commemoration. So James Monroe never got to live in the executive mansion, but in a way he did, in the form of his portrait 200 years later. For more on the life and times of James Monroe, visit the Hands-On History page at our website, www.jamesmonroemuseum.org, where you'll find links to educational resources, our YouTube channel, and social media. You can become a friend of the James Monroe Museum by clicking on our giving page. Thanks for watching this Monroe Minute.